Call to order the Subcommittee on Seapower and Projection Forces. And I want to thank all of the witnesses for joining us today. Thank you for the members joining us for an early morning start. So today the subcommittee convenes to receive testimony on the fiscal year 2018 Air Force budget request regarding bomber, tanker, and airlift acquisition programs. The distinguished panel of Air Force leaders testifying before us today are Lieutenant General Arnold W. Bunch, Jr., U.S. Air Force Military Deputy, Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition. Lieutenant General Jerry D. Harris, United States Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Plans and Requirements, and Major General Scott A. Vanderham, United States Air Force Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. The fiscal year 2018 budget request for projection forces continues to modernize and recapitalize critical Air Force weapons systems. I'm pleased to see significantly increased investment in the B-21 long-range strike bomber and steady investment in procuring KC-46A tankers. The budget also continues to take solid steps to modernize the Legacy Guard and Reserve C-130H tactical airlift fleet and recapitalize the high-visibility presidential aircraft. That said, I continue to be concerned about the ability of our military to properly provide for our nation's defense, given the damage that sequestration may have had on our fiscal year 2018 budget deliberations. Throughout the year, in this past year, in testimony to Congress, Air Force senior leadership indicated the Air Force is one of the busiest, smallest, oldest, and least ready fleets in our history. It is my firm conviction, in light of the higher-end threats posed by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, that we provide the Air Force the resources it needs to fully support and, if possible, accelerate critical recapitalization programs. With regard to bombers, I fully support the critical B-21 bomber program and am pleased to see that we are moving forward on this new platform, which is needed for projecting power over long distances and into denied environments. I look forward to assessing in better detail the classified portion of the B-21 program to ensure progress on design and to assess proposed risk mitigation strategies. With regard to tankers, I am concerned that the KC-46A program continues to suffer delays even after overcoming initial setbacks and is now facing a highly compressed test and certification schedule that has almost zero room for error. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this program and whether or not the first 18 aircraft will be delivered in time to meet the adjusted October 2018 contract deadline. With regard to recapitalizing the presidential aircraft, I want to ensure that the President has the capability to carry out the requirements of the office and that the American people whose taxes fund these aircraft do not have to pay one dime more than necessary. Lastly, I am concerned that this budget fails to provide the necessary resources to procure needed avionics upgrades. These upgrades will ensure that the entire fleet of tankers, airlifters, and bombers are able to operate safely in compliance with the FAA-mandated next-gen air traffic management standards by January 1, 2020. The civilian aviation sector is rapidly moving towards compliance, and I'm concerned that our military aircraft could be shut out of airspace they need for transit and training. While I am pleased that the Air Force's fiscal year 2018 budget request makes up some lost ground over last year, I am concerned that the proposed budget directs the Air Force to make false choices between capability, capacity, and safety when the undeniable reality is that our military needs all of the above. I firmly believe that what this subcommittee and the rest of Congress does about national defense and military readiness will be a defining issue. We need a strong Air Force equipped with the most capable aircraft that enable our men and women to carry out their missions effectively and safely. To do this, we need leadership in national security. We need an unambiguous declaration that our national security is our preeminent responsibility. Once again, I want to thank our witnesses for participating in our hearing this afternoon, and I look forward to discussing these important topics. Obviously, my clock is different than yours. The hearing is this morning. With that, I turn to my good friend and colleague, the ranking member of the subcommittee, Joe Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing on the 2018 Air Force budget request for the projection forces programs within our jurisdiction. And thank you to all the witnesses, again, for being here today. The tankers, bombers, and airlift programs that fall into the projection forces side of our panel's oversight serve as the backbone of our nation's ability to bring and sustain the power that preserves our nation's interest around the world. As we know all too well, however, these important aircraft all share the common enemy of age. The tankers and bombers in service today are largely legacy aircraft. These aircraft, in most cases, are much older than the airmen and women who fly and service them. That is why it will be critical that we ensure that the 2018 budget properly invests in the refueling, mobility, maritime patrol, and long-range strike programs under our purview. Among other things, the budget continues to reflect the high strategic priority placed on two critical recapitalization programs, the KC-46A Pegasus tanker and the B-21 long-range strike bomber. Both of these programs are vital to ensuring that our nation can continue to support operations around the world and respond when needed. Another continued area of concern for me and this subcommittee is the modernization of our C-130H fleet. Back home in Connecticut, the Flying Yankees of the 103rd Airlift Wing have largely completed their transition to their new C-130H flying mission. Half of their aircraft recently deployed overseas on their first combat mission, which was a capstone to years of effort to stand the unit up stemming from the 2005 BRAC. As we all well know, the C-130H fleet is an aging one in need of modernization. This panel led the efforts in the 2015 NDAA to unlock the avionics modernization program needed to upgrade these aircraft with the assistance, again, of some of the witnesses here this morning to meet international airspace restrictions by 2020. A second phase of the program is focused on additional cockpit and technology upgrades. We have heard testimony about the progress made on both of these increments of the avionics modernization program and would appreciate any updates on how the 2018 budget supports these efforts. Along these lines, Congress has invested substantial resources into other C-130H modernization initiatives, such as upgraded engines and propellers. It is my understanding that funding provided in 2016 and 2017 is currently on hold, pending the results of operational testing being conducted right now. Given the strong interest that we have in ensuring that the C-130H remains relevant into the future, I would appreciate an update on this testing and the way ahead. Finally, over the last year, Congress has made meaningful and bipartisan progress in limiting the impact of Sequestration and Budget Control Act. While mitigating the across-the-board cuts in 2016 and 2017 with the two-year budget deal was important, the fact remains that our Air Force, like the military at large, remains handcuffed by sequestration in 2018 and beyond because that two-year deal obviously has expired. World events will continue to further demonstrate just how important it is for all of us on this committee and colleagues on both sides of our aisle to come together to make the compromises needed to protect our security and support the needs of our nation. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and our colleagues on the subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Major General Vanderham, Lieutenant General Bunch, Lieutenant General Harris, I understand that you all are going to be providing a single combined statement, so I will turn it over to you for presentation of that statement.
Thank you, Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Courtney, and other distinguished members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to appear before you today. We appreciate your service and the support this subcommittee provides the United States Air Force, our airmen, and their families. You've already introduced who we're at here. My colleagues and I, previous to this, jointly prepared and submitted a written statement, and I ask that that be entered into the record, sir.
So moved.
We will not go through that statement. However, I will provide the brief opening remarks on behalf of the group. For the past 70 years, from the evolution of the jet aircraft to the advent of the ICBM, satellite-guided bombs, remotely piloted aircraft, and many other accomplishments, your Air Force has been breaking barriers as a member of the finest joint warfighting team on the planet. For the last 27 of those 70 years, we have been in continuous combat. During this period, we employed air power in ways never envisioned and delivered unparalleled support to combatant commanders, sister services allies, and coalition partners. While providing this unmatched operational capability, budget realities have taken a toll on our ability to provide for the future joint force. These many years of combat have taught us much, most importantly that the demand for air power has grown in every mission, in every domain, and in every location. The world has watched your Air Force operate, and the world has adapted. Our adversaries have adapted their capabilities to strike at areas we depend on to execute our missions, adapted their defenses to reduce our ability to employ our forces, and adopted many of our tactics and techniques, all of which reduce our ability to employ forces. Today, we face a world of ever-improving adversaries, increasing threats, and a persistent war against violent extremism. This changing environment of increasing demands and commitments, along with a limited pool of resources to address issues and the threat of Budget Control Act and sequestration, makes our mission of providing unmatched global vigilance, global reach, and global power ever more challenging. The result of these changes is a marked decrease in our technological advantage on the battlefield. Where I once, as a research laboratory commander, would have said that we had a decided advantage across all fronts, today, if asked, I will refrain that we lead in some technological areas. We retain our lead in some technological areas. However, in other areas, potential adversaries are nipping at our heels or are shoulder to shoulder with us. To address the shrinking technology gap, we must continue to invest in S&T and modernize our forces to ensure our most valued treasure, America's sons and daughters, have a decisive advantage when we send them into harm's way. We do not want to fight a fair fight. The FY18 budget we submitted is the best balance of our readiness and modernization we could achieve within the physical constraints we face. We take this balanced approach seriously as we must be ready for today while simultaneously preparing for tomorrow's challenges. The budget request you received continues our emphasis on recovering readiness, filling critical gaps, and improving lethality. The budget invests heavily in our airmen, our most valuable resource. Readiness, nuclear deterrence operations, space and cyber capabilities, combat air forces, and infrastructure. It supports the in-strength growth we need to start to address combatant commanders' requirements, while also focusing on pilot production. We continue to maintain and modernize the nuclear enterprise while also prioritizing the resiliency, future capabilities, and modernization of space capabilities to operate in increasingly contested domains. The budget also supports research, development, and fielding of game-changing technologies. As a department, we had to make tough choices in balancing capability, capacity, and readiness while focusing on modernizing weapon systems. These decisions were not made easily or taken lightly, highlighting that unfulfilled requirements still remain. As you are aware, the budgetary needs of the Air Force exceed projected top-line funding as demand for our Air Force capabilities currently far exceeds our supply. Uncertainty looms over the department as Sequestration and Budget Control Act caps return with this next year's budget. Budget stability remains vital, and relief of BCA limits is necessary for the Air Force to realize its long-term strategy and meet today's and tomorrow's demands. If the law does not change or we get relief, it would lead to a repeat of the negative consequences of sequestration seen in FY13. We request your engagement and assistance to ensure that we do not go down that path. General Harris, General Vandenheim, and I look forward to answering questions from the committee this morning. Again, thank you for your continued support of the greatest Air Force on the planet.
Lieutenant General Bunch, thank you for your opening statement, and we'll now go to Mr. Courtney.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to my members on my side who were earlier than I was at the hearing, so they deserve it.
No problem. Then we will go to Mr. Garamendi. The gentleman yields to the lady from Guam, Ms. Bordallo.
I thank my colleague for being such a gentleman. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. As you know, I am a strong supporter of modernizing our bomber force, which is a key component to both deterrence and engaging in current conflicts. And I'm committed to ensuring that funding for the new long-range strike, the B-21 Raider, stays on track, and that we continue to make critical investments in our high-demand, low-volume fleet. Long-range strike is a key component of national strategy, and B-21 will ensure that capability is present in the future. Last Sunday, gentlemen, we saw North Korea launch its second missile test in a week. It is clear that our deterrent capabilities are as important as ever as we continue to see threats proliferate across the globe. We also saw the importance of that deterrent capability last year when all 3 bomber variants were deployed to Andersen Air Force Base on Guam. the first time they had been deployed together in the Pacific. I have a question for General Vanderham. As best you can in an unclassified setting, could you comment on how a system like the B-21 will improve the deterrent posture of our forces, particularly as it relates to the Pacific theater?
Ma'am, thank you for the opportunity to be here and testify. And first, I'd like to say thank you to each of you for the support that you give to our airmen, total force, and their civilians that live in your districts. Those that are serving downrange, it goes a long way to know that their families are being taken care of. So thanks for your support. Now, to your question on the B-21 and its relevance to deterrence in the future, having myself flown all 3 bombers and had a chance to command all 3 bombers, the deterrent capability of a long-range strike, which gives the most flexible arm of our deterrent triad, you know, the subs for survivability, for responsiveness in the ICBMs, but that flexibility you get in the bomber force allows you to lift and shift capabilities around the world. Currently, you have a continuous bomber presence in the Pacific AOR and on the island that you represent. That presence sends a message, not only a deterrent message, but it sends an assurance message that our umbrella extends to our partners in the region. The commitment to the B-21 is a commitment to the long-range viability of that capability for now into the future. And as Air Force Global Strike Command works on its roadmap of the bomber force into the future, the B-21 is the big part of that, which is why we say we're looking for at least 100. So as they work through the exact number of bombers that we need, the lion's share of that will be the B-21 Raider and its ability to message not only conventionally, but with the nuclear deterrent, sends a message into the mind of our adversary that today may not be the day that I want to mess with the United States.
Thank you, General. I guess this question would go to you too. Now the Air Force leadership has indicated the intent to keep the B-52 in the inventory beyond 2050. It has also acknowledged that new engines would provide a 95% reduction in engine maintenance, virtually eliminating engine overhauls and reducing fuel consumption by 30%. Does the Air Force have a plan to re-engine the B-52 to take advantage of benefits that would afford in terms of future cost avoidance and operational benefits?
So, ma'am, I will take that one if
sorry,
you do
Jan.
not mind. So we do realize that the engines we have on the B-52 are not going to last through the life of the program. We're either going to have to do a service life extension program or we'll have to procure new engines. We're looking at all of those options right now. We have some money in the 18 budget to do some of those initial analyses and look at all those alternatives. And you are correct, ma'am, it's not just fuel savings, it's tanker savings, it's operational implications, it's manpower savings by not having to use as many maintainers on the flight line to be able to maintain those older engines, as well as what you talked about with the time it stays on the wing and the operational viability. Another factor that we will weigh into this are the diminishing manufacturing sources and the obsolescence that we face on many of the components that reside on the B-52 engine, such as constant speed drives and generators, and that we need to assess all of those to ensure that we have the growth potential for any power demands and we can maintain the mission capability rate. The Air Force is actively engaged in that. I got an update on it just last week on where we're at in the progress, and we are discussing with all the appropriate and looking at all the alternatives for how we could or would fund that.
Thank you very much, General. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bordallo. We will now go to Mrs. Hartzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's good to see all of you. Appreciate all that you do for our Air Force, and especially good to see General Vanderham, who was commander of Whiteman Air Force Base when I was first elected. So I appreciate your long support for the Air Force, and appreciate my co-chair of the Long Range Strike Caucus, Madam Bordallo, and her questions about B-21. I kind of want to follow up on that. Very important program. And as your witness testimony states, the Air Force remains committed to a fleet size of 100 B-21s, but I have heard different numbers from other people feeling like we need even more, and certainly, you know, even a range of some are advocating for up to 150, and as we have seen what happened certainly with the B-2 years ago, I have concerns that we're, you know, not going to end up with the amount that we truly need. So given the significant shortfall that we have in the bomber inventory, and do you believe that 100 is adequate, and should we be shooting for 150, or what is your perspective on that number?
So, ma'am, what we have briefed thus far is that we need at least 100. So we are not ruling out the fact that as we do more analysis, we may need more. What we have looked at so far, based on our extensive analysis, looking at the campaign plans and looking at all the plans that are out there, we need at least 100 to be able to meet all those demands, as well as meet the training requirements that we have. Those are all items that we will continue as we move forward, ma'am, to look at.
Okay, I will be watching that very closely, and happy to work with you to try to keep that number as high as we need. We need to provide what we need and not just what we can afford. And along with that, if we fund the B-21 at less than $2 billion in fiscal year 2018, how would the development phase be impacted, and would there be significant delays to the overall program?
So, ma'am, we remain fully committed to the program. It is one of our top 3 priorities, and we have fully funded it in accordance with the Weapons Systems Acquisition Reform Act passed by the Congress to the service cost position that was established by the independent cost assessment. So we remain, and we're committed to putting the money in we need to execute the program. We need all the dollars that we have asked for to go into the program to stay on track, so that we can deliver this vital capability that our nation needs and continue to execute the program on the schedule that we're on.
Right, we look forward to that being fielded in mid-2020s, so that'll be here before we know it, and we've got to keep moving. Wanted to switch to the C-130. I think Ranking Member Courtney mentioned that as well. Of course, Missouri has Rosecrans, and we also have C-130s there, and they visited with me a couple times about the avionics. And I know you're planning to upgrade the cockpit avionics and displays of the older Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve C-130H aircraft, but there is concern among commercial vendors that the Air Force will overly rely on solutions that favor military specifications at the expense of commercial off-the-shelf solutions that are already proven successful in the civilian world of aviation. So how would you address this concern while ensuring that the Air Force is running a process that encourages and does not limit competition?
So, ma'am, I'll answer it in 2 phases. So we have, I think everyone understands that our focus for the C-130 fleet is making sure we're focused on safety, and then compliance, and then modernization. Those are the 3 main, and then a limited recapitalization in certain areas. Those are really our 4-pronged approach to how we're going to address this. The compliance is the AMP Inc. 1, that's to meet the FAA mandates. We have fully funded that. We recently awarded a contract to get that program started, and we're committed to getting all that done on the 130H fleet so that we meet the 2020 mandates. That's in our budget. That's what we're driving to, and we're committed to that. We are using and looking at using commercial solutions in that as well. That was part of the market research we did before we went on contract, to make sure that we were not overly driving a solution that drove military things, and capitalize on what commerciality we can. We are continuing to go through the work on AMP Inc. 2. We have delayed some of the initial steps as we get the acquisition started, but we did that because we had a robust dialogue with industry so that we could understand what commerciality we could apply to the program and not change the end date. So our goal was save money, drive to commerciality, and still meet the end date that we've committed to you and is in our budget that we're going to do. So we're very focused on driving the solution. There will be areas that we have already researched where the military specifications can be met by commercial applications. There may be areas that we won't be able to do that, but we are actively researching that to ensure that we're taking as much of the benefit from commerciality as we can.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hartzler. We will now go to Mr. Garamendi.
Mr. Chairman. Generals, thank you so very much for your service, and As you probably know, I represent both Travis and Beale. Those Air Force bases have almost all that you do except the C-130s. They also have some other platforms. Thank you for the support that you've given to both bases. The Beale now has the KC-135s. Unit will be there. Of the many investments that you've been making, the C-5M recently traveled from Travis to Japan without stopping in Alaska, saving some 14 hours and a whole lot of fuel and time. Well done, gentlemen. I suspect that the continued upgrade and the availability of the C-5Ms will play out all across the world in similar fashion. There are, however, some ongoing questions out there, so let's get to them. The KC-46. I don't think we've had an updated status report, although I know it's on all of our minds. General Bunch.
So, sir, that's a great question, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. We are still remain committed to the KC-46 program. We got all of the money, and we've got everything lined in. We continue to team with Boeing. We are making steady but slower progress than we had anticipated. We are running into areas of where we are being delayed through our airworthiness certification through the FAA process and delays in our test program. We are at this time going through a schedule risk assessment with Boeing as a joint effort. Ms. Costello and I will get an update on that next week, and then we will be coming forward to let everyone know exactly where that's at. Right now, Boeing remains committed to the RAA date that we set last year that we were going to. Our assessment right now shows that we are a little bit behind that schedule, and that we continue to work with Boeing to try to pull that back. Boeing remains a very good partner in that they are applying resources and trying to do what they can to make that schedule. We continue to support their efforts by making sure we provide all the resources we need to execute that program. But right now there have been delays in the testing, and we are monitoring that. And as soon as we get through the schedule risk assessment, we will come back and give everyone an update on where we're at on the program.
If appropriate, can you describe what the specific delays are?
So, sir, we're not executing the test program at the pace that we had anticipated. And as we modify one of the things for getting FAA certification, as components are modified, they have to be reviewed and approved by that process through the FAA. That has not gone at the pace that we would expect. And if you don't get that done, then some of your testing that you would want to do are blocked. The test points you would want to do are blocked. So those are all aspects of what we're balancing out right now to try to get the program on track.
Some of us on this committee also are on the Transportation Infrastructure Subcommittee, and the FAA is a problem there. Is the FAA part of this problem?
We are partnering with the FAA, sir, and we've been partnering with the FAA on this program for an extensive period of time. We continue our dialogue and communication with them. I am not in a position that I would say that the FAA is a problem.
I note the look on your
No,
colleagues'
sir.
faces. We'll let it go at that. All right. The buyback of the C-5As, I understand that there will be a couple of, or maybe more than a couple of the C-5As that are off the line that will be bought back in this budget. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, if I may address that. When we look at what the C5 is capable of, we have 12 C5Ms in BAI. We put 8 of them there in the 15 budget that we were hoping to bring back. And basically, these are airplanes that have been flying. They're just not manned appropriately in the units, ops and maintenance to take care of them. So we're going to buy back 2 a year for 4 years if we're able to have a predictable budget to get the fleet back to a higher quality.
And just a final quick question. The large aircraft countermeasure program, is it online? The troops in my area always want to make sure that they have best protection possible.
Okay, so you're asking about LARCM. I apologize. I hate to do it, but I'll use the acronym. But my understanding is the programs that we're working on with the LARCM program, I've not got any updates that we're running behind any of the schedules we've committed to the warfighter.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. We'll now go to Mr. Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I want to go back to the KC-46A because I still have some questions. I didn't hear a date specific, and it may be that you don't have a date specific, because could you tell us if you do have a date specific, and if so, what is it?
Sir, I would not want to give you a date till I get through the schedule risk assessment that we're working with Boeing, and we have that dialogue. But then again, in light of how we've done all of our communication on the KC-46, I think we've been very transparent with all the committees on that program. As soon as we get that worked out, we will come forward and we'll brief everyone on where we're at.
I expected that was going to be your answer, that you're just not in a position to give it to
Yes,
us
sir.
yet. But I want to make sure we confirm that today, and you're going to give that to us next week?
Sir, I wouldn't say I'm going to give it to you next week. I said what I would say is I said next week. Ms. Costello and I will get an update the first week full week of June. And then once we get that update and we route it up to make sure that our senior leaders know what we're doing, we'll make sure that we come over and explain to everyone where we're at.
As I recall, the award of this contract for Boeing, there was a competition, and it was originally awarded to Airbus USA, and then there was a challenge to that, and there was a rebidding of it, and Boeing came in with basically, and this is a new design. This plane didn't exist.
Sir, I would say it's different than, it is a variant off of their 767 line that they already had up and running, is
As
how
a
I would
tanker?
couch it. It
As a
is a
tanker?
tanker, but a lot of the components are similar to what they were doing on their commercial 767 line.
Do we have U.S. aircraft that are being refueled by some of our NATO allies using the Airbus tanker?
Probably if you look at the Australians have an Airbus tanker.
So,
So, sir, I will take that for the record to make sure that I give you an accurate answer. I know that there are other aircraft that we have gone through some certifications with, and we have partnered as the U.S. government because of our expertise in the area of air refueling. We have actually utilized some of our test personnel with expertise in those areas to go help countries get certified to do missions to support our efforts around the world. But I do not have a specific answer that I would feel comfortable giving you until I go do some research, but we will take that for the record to get you an
thank
accurate
you.
answer.
I didn't expect you to be able to give me a direct answer on that if you didn't have the actual information, but I'd love to know that.
We will give you that information, sir.
That's all I have. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. We'll now go to Ms. Hanabusa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all of you. I wish that we could take these subjects in isolation, and on the branches of our service in isolation, but we can't. Like those of us who are on strategic forces, at 10 o'clock this morning, we'll begin fiscal year 2018 priorities of the nuclear forces and atomic energy defense activities, which is, according to your testimony, Air Force basically operates 2/3 of the triad. And of course, this all relates back to that wonderful thing called the triad. So I guess my question is this. If you're going to assist us in understanding your relevance and your importance and your continued need for the support in the fiscal year 2018 to operate 2/3 of the triad, and as you know, there's always been a discussion as to whether or not the triad is very relevant in the upcoming challenges that we have. Some have said that when you have China, Russia, and North Korea as our major threats in the area of nuclear, that each one of those components does not necessarily fit the triad. The triad is an, I guess, agreed to reaction to the Cold War, and it was the answer to Russia. So having said that, and you are in Seapower, that's the committee we're in, and of course you have the issue of the nuclear submarines that we are dealing with as well. Explain to me as best as you can why the priority should be, as you have stated, which is that as you represent 2/3 of the triad, that we should be 100% behind supporting like 100 B-21 bombers versus maybe another 2 Columbia-class subs. And it's because we don't have an unlimited supply of money. So we've got to, we're the ones who are going to end up balancing this. And my problem is, if we talk to you all in isolation, you all make great arguments. However, that's not the way the world exists. So explain to me why we should support what you want, even at the cost of other platforms. Who wants to take that?
Ma'am, I'd be happy to start
Thank
with that. because it is a long journey that you've asked for us to go down this road. I think all of the services support all three legs of the triad. Each one brings a different piece. As we talk about, the subs that you support through the Seapower are that force that's hard to get to while the oceans are still opaque. Our bomber force brings to us a flexibility and our ability to message, and that is very important in a deterrent role. But as you know, we also use those bombers in our conventional effort. So that's one of the few legs that gets multiple use on a regular basis that lives in both camps or is dual role. And then the throw weight, the big firepower is our land-based ICBMs. So that will be our GBSD effort. And that's our least expensive, although it seems to get the worst press when it comes to, if we go to a dyad, wouldn't it just be bombers and submarines? And I would think that would be an awful choice for us to make as a nation. We need each one of these because, as you said, the threat is different from China, than North Korea, than Russia, and each one of these has a strength against those different threats. We do need all three.
I understand that. My question, though, is we have a limited amount of money, and we have to make that decision. So what's your best pitch that if we're down to whatever monies we have, and we're not going to do everything, why is it that the Air Force component, primarily the big ticket item, is B-21s? Why is that the best way for us to go if we have to choose among two?
So, ma'am, I'll jump in, and I want to remind everybody, we're going through a nuclear posture review, so I don't want to get in front of our Secretary of Defense. I need to allow him the flexibility to listen to all aspects and go review this to make sure we come back. So what I will tell you about the B-21 is that makes it of value to us as the United States Air Force, and I would actually say we provide more than 2/3 of the triad when you consider the national command control communication network that we control about 75% of for the United States. So I would actually say we carry more weight than the 2/3, but that's who's counting. But on the B-21, it provides an unmatched flexibility to be able to reach out and touch anyone in the message. You can recall the bombers. You can send a message with a deterrent. So there is an unbelievable amount of messaging that can be done with that platform. It can do both the conventional and the nuclear mission once we get it certified for the nuke mission, which will occur 2 years after IOC. And then, so that's the reason for the B-21, that flexibility, the ability to recall, the ability to reach out and touch anyone. That's what that platform brings.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Hanabusa. We'll now go to Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being with us here today. It's always budget time is always a good time to review the kind of force we want to buy. I'd like to follow up on that, as well as a line of questioning that Ms. Hartzler posed earlier about the B-21, which I think is especially important given our experience in buying the B-2, where we kept cutting planned procurement numbers until we ended up with what I believe to be a wildly insufficient number of exorbitantly priced aircraft. And in recent years, I've seen highly varying accounts of how many B-21s we actually need to buy, with at one point the Air Force listing a range of 80 to 100. It's a variance of 20%, which seems rather large given the bomber's importance to the force of the future. And as I understand it, as you've said today, we've settled on this 100 number, correct?
At least 100.
At least 100.
Make sure I'm real clear there. At least 100.
Okay. Well, to that point, I mean, can you just give us sort of the logic, the strategic logic that allowed you to arrive at the 100 or the at least 100 number?
So we base at least 100 on analysis that we've done of all the ops plans, and we looked at all of what we want the aircraft to do, as well as the mission set that we would need for the training. So it's not just 100 to go do missions. It's at least 100 to do all the training, to do the depot maintenance. So it's not just a number that we would immediately employ. So there are a lot of components that lead into that, but we base that off looking at our ops plans, doing analysis, running scenarios, and coming up with a number that we believe. So we believe it's been scrutinized by a lot of the department, and we are comfortable that that's a minimum number that we need to be able to execute the nation's missions that it has given us.
So short of a change in those missions, we should consider 100 the floor for the B.
That is what we believe, sir.
But then you have these alternative studies, like the AFA study led by retired Lieutenant General Mike Moeller, which concluded that the Air Force needed substantially more than 100. And his analysis was driven by a historical examination of past air campaigns in scenarios involving North Korea, Iran, and Russia. And in an unclassified report, he found that we would need roughly 60 bombers for a North Korea scenario and 103 bombers for an Iran scenario. And moreover, he found a conflict with Russia could call for as many as 258 bombers, if I'm getting that correct. And given that a two-war standard has traditionally been a critical measurement of our status as a superpower, it seems to me that the right number of bombers should be north of 160 in order to factor in Korea and Iran contingencies. And certainly Lieutenant General Moeller agrees and calls for as many as 200 B-21s. So, I mean, I guess, how would you respond to those outside analyses that sort of project far above the 100 floor?
Well, thank you. If I may add on to General Bunch's question, then, sir, those numbers aren't incorrect. When we look at some of these efforts that are put out there, we do agree that probably 165 bombers is what we need to have. So there are numbers that support that depending on the scenarios. But in addition to the NPR that's ongoing, we also have a national military strategy. It is an internal look that the OSD is doing through the Secretary of Defense, and we don't want to get in front of that. So our approach to it is, it's an early decision. We know we're going to need at least 100. We will possibly need more than that, but as was brought up earlier, these aren't inexpensive weapon systems across this entire effort. So we don't want to throw down a number that may change in several months. So we would rather sit back, say 100 men at this point, and then move on until we get guidance from the Secretary.
So your next decision point is you're going to wait for the national military strategy, analyze that, and come up with an updated requirement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And sort of to take a turn in a different direction, I've never been on Air Force One, and so this question is probably the closest I'll ever get. Particularly if you followed my Twitter feed in recent days. The Air Force One plans on recapitalizing with two, and the chairman mentioned this, two 747-200 presidential aircraft, which will be over 30 years old by the time they're replaced in the mid-2020s. And we're moving towards the two 747-800 aircraft. The estimated cost, I believe, is $3.5 billion. So just kind of following up on what the chairman mentioned, I mean, how can we assure the American people, at a time when there's a lot of scrutiny around the president's travel, that these tax dollars are being properly used to provide what the Office of the President, what is required, but at the lowest possible cost to the taxpayer?
So, sir, I'll answer that one. So it is important that we need to make sure that we can provide a platform that the President can execute the duties of his office, regardless of the situation that we find our nation in. That's one that we need to remember as we look at what that platform is going to provide and what that platform is going to do. We do understand the need to control cost. We understand that. That's an undertaking that we are going after. Right now, we have a $172 million contract with Boeing on risk reduction. Part of that risk reduction is looking at the cost capability analysis and doing trades with what we can and can't do and letting us be smart buyers. The other thing that we have done is we've worked with the White House Military Office and the Air Force, and we've now agreed on a set of requirements that we plan to hold firm, which is one of the reasons we've been able to keep the costs under control on the KC-46. So we will continue to hold firm with those requirements that we have now agreed to and established as the men needed to execute that mission. We have two other contract actions we're doing right now. One of those will be the procurement of the two aircraft. The next one we will do to get to a preliminary design review as quickly as possible. And then what we will do is use all of our acquisition authorities to get the max, and I would ask for max flexibility with as we use those acquisition authorities so that we can go get a contract to get this done and meet the IOC. We plan on being substantive participants in some of the source selections that Boeing will do. They will be the prime. They'll do some of the subcomponents. They'll be doing the competition for those, but we will be substantive participants in that. And we realize we have to efficiently and effectively acquire these systems because it is American taxpayer dollars that we're worried about.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you being with us here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. We'll now go to Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the tardy member here. That's and again, thank you for the great testimony and great questions from my colleagues on the panel. Particularly, Ms. Hartler, covered the C-130 issues nicely, which I did tend to focus on. So I really only have one question, which is on the B-52 modernization. Again, obviously, this is a big piece of your planning in the future, and it's been a multi-year process that you've been involved in. And that's why when the budget came over, it actually reduced by roughly $60 million the modernization efforts that have been built into the prior administrations, the Obama administration's funding for B-52 modernization. I was just wondering if you could explain, that alteration.
So, sir, I do not have any of my program managers on the acquisition side coming to me right now and telling me they can't execute the programs that we've got laid in for the bombers. So, without knowing exactly, if you look at what we're doing the 1760 weapons bay upgrade. We're finishing up the Connect program to give it more modern displays and to be able to connect and have it be on line of sight. We're starting the radar modernization effort. We're doing our investigations into the re-engineering. We've got a whole lot of programs that are going on right now to modernize and keep that platform viable and flyable and able to meet the demands of tomorrow. My take on that would be that all we have done is change it for the fact of life of where we're at in the programs. I am not aware of any program that we have stopped or any program that I have hindered by the ability that we've put in for the budget.
So again, that the new number is adequate?
That is my belief, sir. And I will go back and do an investigation. If it's different than that, I will personally get back to you and your staff and let you know that.
Great, thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Lieutenant General Harrison Bunch, I wanted to talk a little more about the Presidential Aircraft Program. The President's budget request for FY18 has a dollar amount of $434 million that are requested. The request reported last year was $625 million, so it's a $191 million reduction. First of all, is that something that the Air Force is in agreement with? Is it something that the Air Force requested? And can you tell me where that 30% reduction leaves us in, first of all, making sure we deliver those aircraft on time and making sure, too, that we are on track with cost reductions on construction of the aircraft? So any delays, obviously, that happen there, especially with Boeing, can have financial impact. So I want to kind of get your perspective on where we are with that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. We are fine with the budget that is put in. It's rephased dollars aligned with our acquisition strategy that we're going for, and we are not anticipating any changes to the dates that we've predicted for when we would deliver.
Very good. And you're still continued on track with cost projections on the aircraft. I know we've had some discussions about mechanisms to use to make sure that we get the best price possible, but also provide the Air Force some flexibility for the Air Force also to be able to get the best price possible.
So, sir, we understand the critical nature of making sure that we control the cost on this program. Mm-hmm. We're very focused on that. I think you can see the level of attention the Air Force put on that by designating one of our most experienced PEOs, Major General Duke Richardson, putting him solely in charge of that after his great run of executing the KC-46 program and keeping that program on track. So I believe that shows to the committee and to everyone our commitment to making sure that program is executed properly. I am always, what we would ask is that we are allowed to work with you if we decide on language we want to try to put for how we would want to structure what we're limiting ourselves to from a contracting perspective or a cost perspective, so that we all understand the ramifications of those things, and we're doing it in a collaboration because we need flexibility to use all the acquisition authorities that we have while still understanding that this is a critical program to the committee and to the American public that we need to make sure we're executing properly.
And we're absolutely committed to that. I had a great meeting the other day with Lieutenant General Richardson and his efforts to make sure that the cost controls are placed on that program and that we have all the different viewpoints necessary, both with Boeing, the Air Force, Congress, and the administration, to make sure we get the best price possible for the taxpayers, as I spoke about. Lieutenant General Bunch, I wanted to also try to develop a little bit better understanding of the Air Force's efforts with a compass called mission equipment. As you know, you all have appointed L3 as the lead systems integrator and empowered them to make aircraft procurement decisions in order to rehost the compass call mission equipment. And I wanted to get your perspective on why the Air Force is moving in this direction for critical mission components. And if you can give me an example about how you've used this mechanism using private entities in the past versus it being done within the Air Force, or at least within a governmental entity within the Air Force Secretary's office. Give me your perspective on how the decision-making took place there and why you believe that L3 is going to be able to perform and make the critical decisions necessary on this critical program.
So, Chairman Whitten, that's a great question, and I will let everybody know that's in the media this morning that Boeing did file a protest last week. That's now playing out. We'll let the GAO work that. We, the Air Force, remain committed to the acquisition strategy that we brought forward to address this critical need. So I'll stay pretty, I won't go into devil in the details. I won't go into a ton of that, but I will give you an overarching what we were trying to do. And last year, in the 16 congressional language, we were told to go look at, do analysis of alternatives, look at a variety of different options for what we would do for the EC-130H fleet. After looking at all those, the most cost-effective and the most efficient and the most timely being one of the critical components of what we're trying to do, came back with the approach of designating a systems integrator. We do not use the lead part of that. There are specific acquisition things that are tied to being a lead system integrator. This is a systems integrator, sir, just to make sure that I'm real clear on the words that I'm trying to use. And we picked that because the L3 has played that role as the systems integrator as we have modernized these aircraft for the last 15 years. They are the ones that are very familiar with the mission equipment that is on there. That mission equipment is highly classified to be able to execute the electronic warfare mission that we asked that platform to do. And they have all the tooling, they have all the existing knowledge, and they have the modeling and all the information to do that work. And this is for the preponderance of this, a non-developmental effort, meaning that we have had a robust and extensive program of modernizing the mission equipment to be able to meet the demands of the EC-130H mission over the years. And most of that will be simply cross-decked over, and so they have the knowledge, having done that work, having installed that mission equipment, and then the last item that would be there is the short timeline. Our analysis showed that we could do it through this means and do it quicker than we could any other way, getting a critical need to address something out in the future. A threat that is evolving, that if we need more details, we can go to a different classification level, and we're happy to brief anybody on that.
Very good. I want to get to the decision-making element here, and it seems like what you're saying is that there is some advantage then gained by using a private entity like L3 based on their experience in outcomes as it relates to decision-making within this critical realm as to integrating systems on the application of Compass Call. Is that correct?
There are advantages to that, and what I want to make sure, sir, and I apologize I left this part out. We're not stepping out of this and just watching the process play out. Mm-hmm. What we are doing is we will thoroughly review their aircraft selection decision to ensure that it was comprehensive, impartial, and compliant with all the applicable statutes and regulations. So we are not, as I said earlier on the PAR, we're going to be substantive partners. We will allow the system integrator to come in and give us a report of what they've done, and we will analyze and scrutinize that and ask what questions we need to make sure that we are, that it was fair and it was equitable, and we made that decision. The other piece that we will do on this is all of the routine things that we do in acquisition where we ensure that it is cost compliant, fair and reasonable with DCMA, DCAA, all those things will be done in this program as well.
Very good. You had spoken about L3 being systems integrator, not lead systems integrator. I just want to make sure there seems to be some disagreement there within the Air Force. On January the 31st of this year, Lisa Disbrow, who's the acting secretary, wrote a letter to Senator Murray, and she stated extensive analysis determined this lead systems integrator approach is the most efficient, expedient, and cost-effective means to rehost the Compass Call capability into non-developmental commercial derivative aircraft. So it seems that the secretary there is denoting this as a lead systems integrator. So I just want to make sure that we are straight in how you determine and say that L3 would not be the lead systems integrator.
So, sir, I'll go back. I think I have submitted a subsequent letter that said it would be a systems integrator. I may not have that exactly right, but what I will do is go back and we will work through that to make sure that the position we're taking is clear to the committee and what we're trying to do.
Gotcha. Very good. Yeah, I'm just looking at your letter of 1st of February. You also referred to L3 as a lead systems integrator.
And I misspoke, sir, and I'll go back and clarify what we're doing, but it is a systems integrator role is what we're asking L3 to do, and I apologize for any confusion.
And I don't mean to be picking on this, but I do think it's critical as far as the role that the government and the Air Force is going to take in decision-making here. And if you're looking at that there's an advantage to L3 as a systems integrator versus a lead systems integrator, and where the decision-making is going to take place and what role the Air Force will play or what it won't play, I think is really something important for us to understand, because this is a very, very critical system that we want to make sure gets integrated properly.
Yes, sir.
And to make sure that we clearly define Air Force's role and L3's role, I believe is critical. And so there does seem to be some dichotomy there. So I just want to make sure that we are all clear on this.
So we'll continue the dialogue on that. The thought process through that with L3 having been the system integrator for the last 15 years, they are the ones who know what the cross-deck requirements would be better than anyone else. That was the driver. That and the other factors, the time and all the other factors that I taught, sensitivity of the equipment, mission equipment and the mission, those were the drivers that led to the selection of them as the systems integrator.
Well, that's good to know, because that was behind my question of what advantage you gain. You talk about them having base knowledge. You talk about them having dealt with these systems before. The key is, you know, where is the definition of role between the Air Force and L3 to make sure we get it right, so we stay on time, we stay on performance, we make sure that the integration of these systems gets done properly.
Yes, sir. Okay. We're committed to making sure that is, and as I said, we're going to be actively involved in watching that. We'll get reports, analyze all those things to make sure it works. And one of the big drivers, as I said, sir, and I apologize for going over again, the timing of this is really critical to make sure we're ready for the evolving threat to make sure we can execute the mission.
I couldn't agree more. I think timeliness here is critical to make sure there's no hiccups about who's going to perform certain roles, because when there is, we know that also elongates time frames and can complicate things. So that would be great. If you would follow up with us too to redefine what you've stated to us today, I think that would be very helpful to us.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Are there any other questions from committee members for our panelists? If not, gentlemen, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for coming before us today and shining some light on these critical issues for the Air Force, and we continue to look forward to working with you as we go down these roles and making sure that these assets get delivered on time and on budget. And with that, we are adjourned.